Hi, I'm Megan and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I've got 4 breakfast ideas to share with you. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not so great about eating breakfast in the morning. If I do eat it, it's the same old thing, oatmeal, toast, and eggs. So I make these videos to not only hopefully inspire you, but also to hopefully inspire myself to try new recipes and getting better about eating breakfast. So let me show you these ideas. First up, I tried a new recipe for Hashbrown Egg Casserole. I first saw this on Taylor Elmore's channel. It's been a while ago and I've been wanting to make it, just hadn't gotten around to it. But I had a package of the Trader Joe's hash browns in my freezer that really needed to be used up, so I thought this was a perfect opportunity to make this casserole. Here are the ingredients that we're going to use. Here are those frozen hash brown patties that I mentioned, and you do not have to thaw those. I've got some eggs, and then I also had just a little bit of egg whites in this carton, and I want to use those up, so I'm going to use those as well. I've got some milk, dry mustard powder, garlic powder, some shredded cheese, cubed ham, and some green onions. I've got the oven preheating to 350 degrees, and I forgot to mention, but I will have Taylor's video linked in the description box below. And a quick note, I didn't quite have the recipe, but I also didn't do a full recipe either, if that makes sense. So the full recipe calls for 8 of the hash brown patties, and as you can see here, I used 5 of them, but it worked out just fine. So I'm going to season up the hash brown patties with some salt and pepper. You don't have to do that. The recipe doesn't say to do it, but I feel like it needs a little bit of seasoning. I'm going to add some of the shredded cheese on top of the hash brown patties, and then follow that up with some of the cubed ham. And if you don't have the ham or you don't want to use it, you could really use any breakfast meat here. Just use some cooked bacon or sausage crumbles or whatever you prefer. Next, we're going to chop up some of those green onions and scatter those over the casserole. I'm going to set that to the side and get started on my egg mixture. So to this measuring cup, I'm going to add in the eggs. And again, I'm using egg whites just to use those up. And I'm also using just regular eggs. And I'm going to give those a really, really good whisk. I like to mix up my eggs with a fork. I just feel like it works better than a whisk. But hey, if you like a whisk, use the whisk. I'm going to transfer this to a small bowl. I didn't have enough room in my measuring cup. Next, I'm going to add in the milk and the seasoning. So we're going to add the garlic powder, the dry mustard, salt, and pepper, and then give that a really good final mix. All right, and while I'm doing that, quick note. So we loved this casserole. Gary especially really, really loved it. He raved about it, and it was delicious. But you can also totally make this your own. You could add in some peppers, some onion, spinach, tomatoes, mushrooms, different breakfast meats. You know, go crazy. Use your imagination. Use whatever you've got on hand. So I'm going to pour that egg mixture over the hash brown casserole, and then we're going to cover this with foil and bake this for about 25 minutes. We're then going to remove the foil and bake it for another 20 to 25 minutes until it starts to get golden brown and your eggs are cooked all the way through. And this is what it looked like when it was done. I would suggest you letting this sit for about 10 minutes before you serve it up. All right, here are the plates. So I served the casserole with some fresh fruit. And then for Gary this morning, I'd made some of the Krusteaz blueberry muffins a few days before this, and we had one left over, so I served that up. And like I said, we loved this casserole. It was delicious. I highly recommend you give it a try. Next up, I made avocado toast. Now, I've shared an avocado toast before on my channel. It was different. I've been trying to find different ways of making avocado toast, especially like looking on Instagram and on Pinterest. Just, you know, toast and mashed avocado can kind of get a little bit old after a while. So like I said, I'm trying to find new spins on it. I made this version for Gary, and he really enjoyed it. So let me show you how I put it together. All right, here's everything I'm going to use. First up, I have some sourdough bread. Use whatever bread you prefer. I've got some eggs. Gary loves sprouts, and we have some on hand, so I'm going to use some of those. We, of course, need avocado for the avocado toast. I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice to the avocado to help it from getting brown. I've got some of the everything bagel seasoning, and then when we went into Trader Joe's recently, we grabbed some of the crunchy onion oil. This was our first time using it, and then I've also got some salt and pepper. I'm going to start out with the toast. Now, I'm sure you know you can make the toast in a toaster. You can pop it in the oven. You can use the air fryer. I've got my skillet out to cook up the eggs. So I'm just going to drizzle both sides with a little olive oil and then cook it for a few minutes on each side until it's golden brown. And I did let it get more golden brown and toasted than what the footage shows. So once that's ready, I'm going to set that to the side and get started on the avocado. Now, what I like to do with avocados is take a little paring knife and run it around the pit of the avocado. And you want to do this carefully. I'm then going to scoop out the side of the avocado that doesn't have the pit. You can do that with a fork or spoon. And then I've seen on Food Network cooking shows and stuff like that where chefs will take like a big knife and kind of like hawk into the avocado pit to remove it. I used to do that, but I did have it slip on me one day. So now I just give the avocado a little squeeze. That's all you have to do. Just give it a little squeeze and the pit will come right out. And so that's what I prefer to do. If you want to use the knife, you do you. But I'd recommend, just kind of squeezing it out. It's a little safer. You don't have to worry about cutting your hand. All right, so to the avocado, I'm going to add just a little bit of lemon juice. You could also do some lime juice. And then I'm going to season this up with some salt and pepper. Avocado, if it doesn't have a little bit of salt, I'm not saying you have to like go crazy with the salt, but if you don't season it with a little bit of salt, a lot of times it just tastes like nothing. It's very bland. So I'm going to mash that up and then set that to the side. All right, so in this skillet, I've got it over about medium heat. I'm gonna mix up that crunchy chili onion and then add some to the pan. I wasn't really sure how much of this to use. Gary said that in the final product that the egg by itself was a little on the spicy side, but he said by the time you ate it with the avocado, the egg yolk, and the bread, that it was a good spiciness. So next time I think I'd cut it back just the tiniest little bit. But once I've got the oil in there and it's nice and hot, I'm going to add in a couple of eggs and then season them up with some salt and pepper and cook them for a couple minutes on each side till they're done to our liking. And then I am ready to assemble the avocado toast. And a quick note, I did cook these until the yolk was runny. If you like your yolk cooked all the way through, just cook it a few extra minutes. So I've got the toasted bread. I'm going to add our mashed avocado. Next, I'm going to add on those sprouts. And again, you could totally skip these if you want. I just happen to have them on hand and I know Gary loves them. To the top of the sprouts, I'm going to add those eggs. Now, you could just use one egg if you like, but Gary was working out this day, so I went ahead and added 2 for some extra protein for him. I'm going to add some of the everything but the bagel seasoning, and then on top, I added just a couple more sprouts just for a little bit of a garnish, and that's it. So to serve this up, I just did some fresh fruit, and Gary loved this. He let me try a bite of it, and it was really good. It was delicious, so I definitely make this combination again. I had some strawberries on hand that really needed to be used up. They were just on the border of being a little yucky. So I decided to do small batch strawberry scones. Now these scones made plenty for us for breakfast, but you could easily double this recipe. So I will of course have the recipe linked in the description box below for you. Here are the ingredients we're going to need. I've got some granulated sugar. You could of course use a sugar substitute, all-purpose flour, baking soda, baking powder, salt, an egg, and we're just going to use the yolk, some butter, and you want to make sure the butter is nice and cold, powdered sugar, milk, and then those diced up fresh strawberries. I've got the oven preheating to 425 degrees. In this bowl, we're going to add our dry ingredients. So we're going to add in the flour, the sugar, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. And then using a whisk, I'm going to mix that until it's really well combined. Now, this was my first time making scones, but it's basically just like making a biscuit. So if you've made homemade biscuits before, you can totally do this. It was really easy, and these turned out super, super delicious. Now we're going to add our butter, and again, make sure it's really cold, and we're going to cut those into small pieces. And then using either a pastry blender or I just use a fork, we're going to cut the butter into the flour. Now, all I do is press the butter into the flour. I like to use the side of the bowl. And once it looks like wet sand or just little teeny tiny pieces of the butter in your flour, you're going to set that to the side. Next, we're going to get started on the wet mixture. I'm using a little measuring cup. You can do this in a bowl. I'm going to add the milk. Now, I keep 1% milk on hand. That's just my preference. You can use 2% whole milk, whatever you like. Now, like I said, we just need the yolk, so I'm going to separate the yolk and the white and then set the white to the side, and I'm going to use that for our scrambled eggs in a minute. Now, we're just going to add the wet to the dry, and we're going to mix that. You don't want to over mix it. You want to mix it just until it's combined. I should have done this with a spoon or a spatula because, as you could see, it got all in the whisk, but that's okay. Once you've got that mix, we're going to gently fold in the strawberries, and then that's pretty much it. We're ready to roll these out into the scones. Now, just like with making biscuits or baking bread, you want to make sure you have a clean working surface, and we're going to add a little bench flour to that surface and turn out our dough. Now, we're going to add just a little more flour on top. Try not to add too much flour because then you're just going to make it tough and dense. But we're just going to knead this very, very lightly and then press this out into a circle that's about 1 inch thick. Next, we're going to cut that into half and half again. That's what the recipe said, but next time I make these, I would cut them one more time and make 8 littler scones, if that makes sense. So once we've got our scones cut, we're going to add them to a greased baking dish, and these are going to go into the preheated oven, and we're going to bake them for about 12 to 15 minutes or until they are golden brown. Here's what they look like at that point. The recipe said to let them cool on the baking sheet for 5 minutes and then transfer them to a wire rack and allow them to cool completely about 15 to 20 minutes. While the scones are cooling, I'm going to make the glaze. So the recipe said to use 2 ingredients, powdered sugar and heavy cream. I didn't have any heavy cream on hand, and to be honest, I was not about to buy a whole thing of heavy cream for like 1 tablespoon that this recipe needed. So I'm just going to use the 1% milk that I've got. And then anytime I make glazes for things, I like to add in a little tiny dash of vanilla and then the tiniest little pinch of salt. Don't worry, the salt does not make it taste salty at all. Remember, salt is a flavor enhancer. So it's just going to enhance the sweetness of the powdered sugar, but also the vanilla that I added to it. So once I've got that mixed until it's a like drizzleable consistency and those scones are cooled, I'm going to drizzle that glaze over the scones and then they are ready. So to serve this up, I've just got the scones, some fruit, and some cheesy scrambled eggs. And like I said, those scones were tasty. They were really yummy. I'd definitely make these again. Last but not least, I like doing Copycat breakfast sandwiches from restaurants, especially from Starbucks, because Starbucks breakfast sandwiches are really, really pricey, at least to me anyway. And this one especially is so easy to make. We're going to do the Starbucks bacon, Gouda, and ciabatta breakfast sandwich. So here are the ingredients I'm going to use. First up, I've got my ciabatta rolls, and really you could use whatever bread you prefer. You don't have to stick with ciabatta. I've got a little bit of milk, some salt and pepper, some sliced Gouda cheese, cooked up bacon, eggs, and then the Starbucks menu describes this as being bacon, Gouda, and a Parmesan frittata. And so to kind of make my own version of a Parmesan frittata, I'm going to use some freshly grated Parmesan cheese. All right, let me show you how to put this together. I'm going to start out by making like my Parmesan egg scramble to kind of replicate the frittata. To this bowl, I'm going to add in a few eggs, and then I like to add in a little splash of milk to my eggs. I know some people say absolutely don't add milk. Some people add like ricotta cheese or a little sour cream. You do you. Whatever you like to add to your eggs, add to your eggs. Now to season these up, I'm going to keep the seasonings pretty simple. Normally I add in Tony's to my scrambled eggs, but today I'm just going to do some salt and pepper. I'm going to give that a really, really good whisk with my fork and then set that to the side. I've got this skillet over medium heat. Here is some bacon that I'd made, I think the day or two before, and I just want to warm it up a little bit. I mean, it's already cooked, but again, I just want to warm it. You can use really whatever breakfast meat you prefer. You could also just do like pre-cooked bacon. That's totally fine. So again, just going to cook this for a minute or two on each side to warm it up, and then I'm going to set the bacon to the side. In this same skillet, I'm not going to bother wiping it out. There's really no bacon fat in there. It's just a little bit of the bacon flavor. It's not going to hurt anything. I am going to add in just a little bit of butter. Once that butter has melted, I'm going to add in my scrambled eggs. And what I like to do is, again, I don't put this over any higher heat than medium, and I allow it to just sit for a couple minutes until, as you can see, it starts to harden up around the edges. At that point, I like to take a spatula and just kind of drag it across the skillet, just go back and forth a few times, and then I leave it alone and allow it to sit again for a minute or two, and then again, just move it back and forth. And that kind of helps your eggs get really fluffy and big, you know, pieces. So once it's almost done, I'm going to add in some of that grated Parmesan cheese, and then it's done. All I'm going to do is kind of separate these out into sizes that are going to fit on the breakfast sandwich. I'm going to add a slice of the Gouda cheese and then set that to the side, and the carryover heat will melt that cheese, and we're ready to assemble the sandwiches. Now for the ciabatta roll. Now these ciabatta rolls were a little on the tough side, so to help with that, I wrapped this in a damp paper towel and popped it into the microwave for about 20 seconds or so, and that will soften up. I'm going to add my warmed up bacon. Then we're going to add our scrambled eggs, and that's it. Like I said, simple sandwich, so much cheaper than going to Starbucks, and it really wasn't that hard. It doesn't take very long at all to make. So to serve this up, just served it with some grapes, and this was a yummy little breakfast sandwich. All right, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this gave you some new ideas to try. If you liked this video, hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.